We are back. A's baseball, past, present, and future. My co-host is Patrick Tracy, who's on the DL today. So we've called up, not from the minors, from the majors. We've called up Al Blumkin to come in and substitute. Al is an integral part of the Comfortably Zoned radio network, and one of the smartest guys I know. Al Blumkin, how are you, sir?
Doing okay.
Good. You had a kind of a rough week technology-wise.
Yeah.
You want to give us all a little rundown? You had a big loss.
Well, it's very simple. My modem, I have Spectrum, which is the new name that Time Warner Cable goes under, and my modem crashed 2 nights ago, so I lost my internet. So I called them up. They sent somebody over here to fix that, and in the process of fixing that, the cable box went awry. I had a tremendous DVR collection of a lot of my favorite movies, most of which were classics, and that went, when they put the new box in, that went by the boards. I had the same problem when Spectrum took over Time Warner about 7 or 8 months ago, and they had to replace the box, and I lost everything I had at that point. It took me 4 months to build it up again, and now, as of Friday, it was gone. So it's really upsetting. Technologically,
is there a way to build it up?
I built it up through DVRs, a lot of stuff off TCM, Turner Classic Movies, which is not showing too many interesting things, this month. For my interest, I met a lot of other people, they like it, but it's not my cup of tea.
Sorry, you're going through that, Al.
I did a ton of them in February when they run their Oscars, and they show movies in alphabetical order that have won some sort of an Oscar. So I built up about half of it through that, and that's all gone. They probably won't show a lot of them till next February. So. What are you going to do?
Hey, just off the top of my head, what's your favorite movie of all time?
Probably Kane. Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane. Okay. With the Rosebud.
Yeah, I had Kane, Casablanca, Maltese Falcon, my 2 favorite Hitchcock's, Vertigo and Rear Window. A whole bunch of stuff that I had accumulated over a long period of time.
Wow, that's a tough blow.
It's a tough blow, yeah. But look, this happens.
We're here. We're above ground.
Yeah.
Could be a lot worse.
Exactly.
The circumstances. Yeah. Okay, Al, I'd like to talk today. Last week on the show, I discussed a little bit about Charlie Finley, and discussed with Patrick, and we talked about a book. I wonder if you read it. It was called Charlie O, and it was by a fellow whom I knew in Sacramento. His name was Herb Mickelson, and he wrote an incredible biography of Charlie that through 1979, when and the team, the Oakland A's, which I think was the last dynasty in baseball. They won 3 in a row, 5 divisions in a row.
Yeah, well, and free agency broke that team up.
Yes, and Charlie's stupidity, Charlie's stubbornness, and what have you. But I'm concerned today about, the A's started in Philadelphia. They went to Kansas City, and from Kansas City, they went to Oakland. What I'd like to know is what precipitated the move from Philadelphia to Kansas City, and what precipitated the move from Kansas City to Oakland. And I want to find out about Arnold, who ran the team.
Arnold
I think
Johnson.
He bought the team from Connie Mack. And fill us in a little, Alan.
Okay, what happened was in the light of the Boston Braves moving to Milwaukee after 1952 and the St. Louis Browns also vacating a two-team team to go to Baltimore, the Philadelphia A's became next. Basically what happened is Connie Mack was 93 at the time. And, 92 at the time. And he had two sons from his first marriage, Roy and Earl, who were essentially running the team, and because Connie Mack was, past,
past his prime,
way past his prime. And Mack had given up the managerial reins after 1950 when he was 88 years old, and they really were not in the forefront of knowing how to make money. Mack had two super teams, one in the early teens. They broke up after 1914, and the one in the late 20s and early 30s with Jimmy Fox, Al Simmons, Lefty Grove, and Mickey Cochran. They broke up, started breaking up after they won their third straight pennant in 1931. And Matt
Why did they break up these teams? Were they just trading guys off for money? Was that?
Yeah, basically selling guys. You have to understand, with Philadelphia up until 1934, there was no Sunday ball allowed in the state of Pennsylvania. So you had no Sunday crowds. Of course, there was no night balls, no rate, no media.
Those blue laws.
Yeah, no media, and the only money Mac was able to get was basically from ticket sales and whatever concession money they managed to get during the game. There's no outside income. You don't have ESPN paying billions of dollars for television rights or anything like that the way they do now. So Mac was always living on a shoestring. And after he broke up the second team, he still thought he'd become functional by his old ways of, asking friends of his to inform him about ball players. Never built any sort of a farm system. So after that, when they started losing, and they were pretty bad during the late 30s and the early 40s, he finally got together a team that came in fourth in 1948 and was in the race with the Yankees, Red Sox, and Indians until the last couple of weeks of the season. They fell off again in 1952 when they had Bobby Shantz winning 24 games and Ferris Fain leading the American League in batting average for the second straight year. They finished fourth. But that team went in a hurry, and Mac decided he couldn't pay most of his ball players any money. So he shipped, after 52, he shipped Ferris Fain to the White Sox. Freddie Robinson. Fain went downhill very, very quickly after that. And he shipped Dave Philly, who was one of their prime outfielders, to the Indians for a couple of pitchers whose names are best forgotten because they have very, very tiny major league careers.
Dave Philly was a pinch hitter for a lot of years.
He was an outfielder. They had gotten him and Gus Zernial from the White Sox in the end of April 1951. This is the three-team deal that the White Sox wound up with Minnie Minoso from Cleveland. And Zernial led the American League in home runs and RBIs in 1951.
And I know he was on the 52 top set.
Yeah, that card, that iconic card with the 5 baseballs.
With the 5
looked like they were pasted to the bat.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
That's an iconic card out of that set, yeah.
Absolutely. And we've talked about this. You have that 1952 set memorized.
Yeah, I have it on reprint because the originals are just incredibly expensive.
Yeah, well...
Yeah, I remember. That was one of the things I did when I was starting to recuperate from my back surgery. I was lying in bed all day for a long time, and I just I decided to memorize it. So
you play mind games and what
yeah.
have you.
So anyway,
that was the card. That was the one card, the Gus Cernal card, that really typifies that people remember in that 52
yeah.
set. Yeah, kind of cool.
So
they were struggling, and did they move the team to Kansas City and then sell it?
No. What happened was in 1954 they won 51 games and finished 60 games behind the Indians in the American League that year, and they drew the whopping attendance of 306,000, which is less than 4,000 a game. They had no farm system to speak of, okay, and no money coming in any other way. So Connie Mack was 92. The two sons were in their 60s, and as I said, they were not the brightest bulbs in the world.
Okay.
So
he was not a good manager then.
Mack quit managing after 1950. He was 88 when he retired.
But his kid Earl took over.
No, Jimmy Dykes managed them for 3 years, and then when Dykes went to Baltimore after 1953, Eddie Juice managed them the last year. He was a regular shortstop whose career was winding down. He managed them in 1954. Bobby Shantz had come down with arm trouble in 1953 after being hit on his pitching hand by a pitch ball at the end of 1952. He tried to rush back, and he was very, very ineffective. The leading hitter in the 54 A's was an infielder named Jim Finnegan, who 302 was a rookie. And the biggest winner was a pitcher by the name of Arnold Porter Carrero, who won 9 games. So basically, they tried, Del Webb, who was a co-owner of the Yankees, was essentially running the American League. And the Macks tried to sell the team to a group in Philadelphia, and the American League voted that transaction down. Because Webb had the idea.
Did Webb have control of that? Did he?
Oh yeah. Well, they
have an agenda.
When Fort Frick was commissioner, Walter O'Malley ran the National League, and Dan Topping and Del Webb, who co-owned the Yankees, ran the American League.
Okay.
So it was basically
what was his agenda in stopping that deal between Philadelphia?
Because the buyer he had lined up for the Kansas City A's was a man named Arnold Johnson, who had significant business dealings with Webb, who at that point owned Yankee Stadium and the Kansas City Blues Stadium, which would become Municipal Stadium in Kansas City, where the A's would play their entire existence. And Johnson also, for a while, owned Yankee Stadium, so there was a lot of incest going on there between those two. So
Johnson owned Yankee Stadium?
Yeah, he owned Yankee Stadium. The Yankees sold it, and I think Johnson eventually sold it to the Catholic Church, the Knights of Columbus.
Okay.
But he had all these ties with Johnson, and he steered the franchise to Johnson. And of course, then when they proposed this deal, the American League voted to allow it. By this time, Bill Veeck was out of the American League. Veeck had owned the St. Louis Browns, and one of the conditions to let the team move to Baltimore was that he sell out, which he did.
Right.
So in 1954, you had the Yankees controlling the other 7 teams.
Okay, and then they bought it and moved it, or
Yeah, they moved it to Kansas City.
Okay.
Okay, you had certain players. Bobby Shantz was still there, and even though he was not nearly what he was earlier in his career, and you had perennials like Gus Arniel.
And when they moved,
Gus Arniel, your Elmer Vallow, and your old buddy Joe DeMaestri, who would by that time become the regular shortstop there.
Right, he was the last. Joe DeMaestri was the last first Kansas City shortstop.
Yeah, he was a regular until he was traded to the Yankees in the Maris trade.
Right, which indicates to me that among other players traded, they were really a farm club.
Oh yeah, both Ralph Terry and Clete Boyer did apprenticeships. In fact, Ralph Terry came up with the Yankees as a bonus baby, was traded to Kansas City in the Billy Martin deal, and then came back in 1959 when the Yankees got Hector Lopez with Ralph Terry for Jerry Lumpy and two pitchers, Johnny Cooks and Tom Sturvin, both who had come down with lame arms.
Was Seaburn involved in that trade?
Seaburn was in the Maris trade.
Okay.
They sent Seaburn
and Lumpy were two good.
Yeah, I know. They were very close friends. Seaburn was traded after 1959 with Mark Throneberry, Hank Bauer, who was at the end of his rope and wanted to go home. He lived in the suburb of Kansas City, and Don Lawson. He had the perfect game. Yeah.
Guys went back and forth. I know.
Yeah,
Serve was one of those that went.
Serve went back and forth. Slaughter went back and forth. The Clete Boyer went back and forth. I mean, it's just anytime the Yankees felt that they had a player in that team that could be useful, they'd concoct a trade and trade their players who were either washed up or never was or has-beens to Kansas City for what they needed. They were operating as a farm team.
I can still remember the expression on my friend Marty's face when, in the schoolyard, when it was announced that we got word that the Yankees got Bud Daly.
Yeah, that was under Finley. That was the last trade that they made with the Yankees for a while. They got Bud Daly, and they sent Art Dittmar, who was having a very big year at the time, and Darren Johnson, who several years later would lead the National League in RBIs with the Cincinnati Reds.
Oh, yes.
Darren Johnson
was supposed another catcher, too, Darrell Johnson.
Yeah, Darrell Johnson became the manager of the Red Sox when they won a pennant in 1975. But Darren Johnson was, again, one of the first of the next coming of Mickey Mantles.
Right.
Which you had Tom Tresh, and you had Roger Repose, and several others who.
Mercer was supposed to be the next coming, as well.
Well, Mercer had a relatively decent major league career.
He did, and he was involved in one of the worst trades for both teams ever. It was Mercer for
Bobby Bonds.
Bobby Bonds is.
Yeah, what happened was Mercer, the Yankees in 1974 and 75 played in Shea Stadium while Yankee Stadium was being renovated. Mercer had problems with Shea Stadium. He couldn't produce in that place. He just was psyched out by it. So they traded him for Bobby Bonds. They kept Bonds for 1 year, and they shipped him to the Angels after 1975 for Mickey Rivers and Ed Figueroa, who were instrumental in them winning the American League pennants the next three seasons and the 78 and 77 World Champion teams.
Right. Mick the Quick was very underrated. He was filled the bill for a long time. What was that like when I was out in California when the Yankees were playing in Shea Stadium? I remember Elliot Maddox
Yeah.
Was an outfielder.
He stepped into a drain or something out there, and he basically tore his knee up, and that was the end of him as a really useful ball player. I went to a number of games because I lived near Shea Stadium back then, and I went between the Mets and the Yankees. I went to about 60 games in 1974. The Yankees were in the race until the last couple of weeks that season, and it was weird. It was really, really weird watching them play there.
Yeah. How were they received by, did Yankee fans come out to see them? Or
yeah, when they won, they weren't as, up to seeing them there as they were in Yankee Stadium, but in 74, as I said, they were in the Eastern Division race till a couple of weeks before the end. And they do fairly well during that particular season. And 75, they were beaten a shutout in the doubleheader by the Red Sox at the end of July, and that essentially ended their division hopes in that season. And then they made the announcement about a week after that they're bringing Billy Martin back. Billy Martin in to manage the Yankees. They fired Bill Verdon, who had managed them in 74. And Bill Verdon, of course, is the trivia question, who managed the Yankees for most of 2 seasons and never managed a game in Yankee Stadium.
Oh, that is a good question, right?
But after they fell apart in July of 1975, they didn't enjoy very much the rest of the season.
Okay. How did Finley get the team from?
Finley wanted to put out that he wanted to buy a team, and there was speculation that he was going to attempt to buy the White Sox from Bill Veeck, who was suffering health problems at that point.
Okay.
And so finally, Johnson had Arnold Johnson had dropped out of a heart attack in the winter of 1960. And his estate and none of his family wanted to be involved with it. And his estate put the team up for sale, and Finley stepped in and bought it.
With the idea he was going to keep him in Kansas City.
Well, supposedly at the start, but right then and there, he had a miserable relationship with the media. The Kansas City Star had a writer named Ernest Mell, M-E-H-L, and they fell into a feud almost immediately upon Finley's arrival.
Right.
So Finley, almost a year after he had bought the A's, his first year owning them was 1961, he was looking for places to go to. He tried Louisville, he tried Dallas, and after being voted down, also there were court cases. The 2 senators from Missouri, Stuart Symington, and the other one was the guy who, last name escapes me right now, who McGovern had to throw off the ticket because they found out that he had, undergone electric shock treatments for depression.
Oh, whoa.
Tom, I have to look that up. I forget the name.
I can't think of it.
And, Symington especially is very powerful. And he finally told Finley, he says, you leave, we're going to, open up the antitrust exemption. And the compromise, of course, was that after a year with no baseball, the Kansas City Royals were formed. And with that expansion,
in other words,
they brought in Kansas City, a new team in Kansas City. They brought in a new team in Seattle. Tom Eagleton was the name of the senator. Just hit me.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and so when they brought in Kansas City and Seattle pilots in 1916, they brought Kansas City, they brought a team in Seattle, which only lasted 1 year, the Seattle Pilots. But once they brought a new team into...
That was the Jim Bouton team, basically.
Once they brought in the Royals, the Missouri Senators got totally disinterested in bringing the antitrust exemption up. Of course, they did the same thing in Seattle, and that was dropped once the Mariners were created in 1977. So, so he wound up.
Baseball does not want to lose that antitrust.
No. And what surprised me was when they went out to Oakland, because the Giants had a monopoly on the Bay Area market from the time they went out there in 1958 through 1967.
Right.
And also, one of the big things that the people in Kansas City were not that upset about the A's leaving is because, as a converse to the Milwaukee Braves, who had 13 straight winning seasons in Milwaukee before they moved to Atlanta, the A's had 13 straight losing seasons. They never had a winning season in Kansas City.
Well, not one.
Not one. The closest they came to was in 1958 when they won 73 and lost 81. That was the closest they had to a winning season in their entire existence there. So, of course, the Kansas City people got fed up with seeing these kinds of teams. And even though, right toward the end, he brought in Catfish Hunter, he brought in Sal Bando, brought in a couple of the players that would...
Campaneris was coming up.
Yeah, Campaneris was there already. He brought in a number of players who would figure prominently in the dynasty teams of the 70s.
Reggie Jackson?
Reggie Jackson didn't come till Oakland, till the first year in Oakland.
Oh, he didn't play in Kansas City?
No, he didn't play in Kansas City.
Didn't know that, or didn't remember that. Oh, yeah, you got to give Finley an awful lot of credit for being a scout.
Finley was a new talent. He knew how to accumulate talent, and he didn't want to pay it. That was the problem. So once free agency came in, and he had already lost, Catfish Hunter 2 years previously, when he didn't pay the contract out the way he was supposed to. He was supposed to pay.
He was supposed to make an annuity payment.
Half of it into an annuity, and he didn't do that. So Catfish Hunter was declared by an arbitrator to be a free agent, and the Yankees wound up signing him for what then was a tremendous amount of money.
Right.
And the players all saw, what happened when somebody of that caliber was out there, as a free agent, and and then when the free agency was done away with after the 1975 season, the team, that dynasty team, was united in their hatred for Finley. And they all left as free agents as soon as they possibly could.
I remember that Finley offed Raleigh Fingers and Joe Rudy to Boston. And
Via Blue to the Yankees. And Bowie, the great Bill Bowie Kuhn, people talk about Bud Selig being in the Hall of Fame as something they're not happy with. I said they lowered the bar where they put Bowie Kuhn in.
Oh, I can't imagine them.
And Bowie Kuhn, Bowie Kuhn and Finley hated each other. So Bowie Kuhn stopped those deals.
Idiot. Finley called Bowie Kuhn the village idiot.
Bowie Kuhn stopped those sales in what he called the best interest of baseball, which is a phrase that he used fairly frequently.
Right.
So there are pictures of Fingers and Rudy in Red Sox uniforms.
A pre-game show. He was both players. I remember vividly in the Red Sox uniform. They never played, they never played one game.
No, never played an inning for them. Yeah.
But I do remember them in uniform, and it looked weird. It just looked very strange. Joe Rudy not being an A for his entire career.
Well, they both left after the 76 season as free agents. Fingers went to San Diego, and
but the fact that it ever came,
Rudy went to the Angels.
Break up, they broke up a terrific dynasty.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
They were not unlike the early Stanley Yankees. They won whenever they had to. Yeah, they won 3 World Series. I was at all 4 of the games in Cincinnati. I was at all 3 of the games in 1973 at Shea Stadium.
Well, I was at the sixth game against the Mets at the Oakland Coliseum, and Jack Benny threw out the first pitch that game. Of all people, I don't know why Finley picked him, but that's the way it happened, and they lost. The Mets lost to the A's that sixth game, and I knew they'd lose the next day because of momentum.
Yeah, and also they won by 1 run at Cincinnati in the seventh game in 1972. And walking out of Riverfront Stadium after that game was like walking out of a big funeral home.
Well, I had my own private little funeral when I was walking out of the Oakland Coliseum after that sixth game. I was just in mourning because, it was the Mets. I was living in California. They were out here, and it was one of my favorite. That 73 team was one of my favorites. They were so buried early on. They had so many injuries, so many guys going off to the reserves, the Army reserves, the Marine reserves, that kind of thing. And Harrelson was hurt early on, and Cleon, and all that. And they were about to fire Yogi Berra, and I think Sheffing was the general manager. And they would have polls in the Post. People don't realize how tough the New York press is, but they would have daily polls asking people for their opinion about whether or not the team should be fired or those guys should be fired. Tough press in New York, and big difference between the rest of the country. I was talking to someone the other day about the predominance of New York players being voted in to the Hall of Fame at the expense of others who were equally as great, just didn't grow up and just didn't play in New York. For instance, Marty Marion is every bit as qualified to be in the Hall of Fame as Reese and Rizzuto. They just didn't have the press depicting them as greats as did Reese.
Well, the one from the 1950s,
Rizzuto.
Who I feel that should have been in there a long time ago. Is disgrace he's not in there is Minnie Minoso.
I agree with you 100% for a whole bunch of different reasons, not just because of his playing ability. He was an ambassador from Cuba. What these guys had to go through coming to a strange country, strange language, strange mores, strange customs.
And he played in the Negro Leagues with the Negro Cubans.
He was a black man.
And he was the first great Latin superstar. He was in the major leagues for good, 4 years out of Roberto Clemente.
Right.
And he went through as you just mentioned, he went through an awful lot. And he piled up, especially playing in the White Sox Park was Comiskey Park, which is not exactly a haven for hitters.
Right.
But played most of his career there, and I felt that based on what he did and what he contributed to the game, that he should have been, put in a long time ago.
Right.
But
there are a number of guys, and we've talked about how objective it is, or how
subjective
it is, rather than anything else. And I contend that you could just, first of all, you take an institution that doesn't put DiMaggio in on the first voting. And somebody brought up the fact that they thought that Yogi wasn't put in his first
No, he wasn't. He won it the second time.
Wow. So it becomes either a popularity contest or, I don't know. Yogi and DiMaggio not going in the first time really throws me.
Well, you have, some of these writers out there. Nobody in the Hall of Fame has ever gotten 100%. Okay, that means the Henry Aarons and the William Mazes and the Mickey Mantles and
Griffey. Did
no,
Griffey get on?
no. The closest I think has been Tom Seaver, got 98.
Okay, Tom Seaver.
But you get these people who don't, for whatever crazy reason they may have, don't feel that anybody should get in their first try.
And you could also address, you're an expert on this, the Old Timers Committee, how they've skewed
God,
reality.
We can get the whole discussion on that. I mean, they put in guys like one of the, Charlie Gehringer engineered the admission of Rick Farrell. And you look at Rick Farrell and you look at his brother Wes, and the easiest thing to conclude is that the wrong Farrell is in the Hall of Fame. There's nothing that Rick Farrell ever accomplished on a ball field that made him, should have made him eligible to be in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
The same thing with a Cardinal pitcher named Jesse Haynes and a number of the old Giants that Frankie Frisch steered in. Now we can go. Hall of Fame is something you can get on. You can get on this topic. You can get on forever and ever and ever.
Right. We'll do that on another show, Alan.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. This has been terrific, as usual, and we're going to be back next week. Patrick should be in better shape, hopefully, and tell them about the shows you have on this network. You have a wonderful show
I have a show I do with David Nemec called David Nemec's Old-Time Baseball History and Trivia. Recently we've been doing a series of shows starting with the 1890s on seasonal breakdowns. We did decade by decade from the 1890s through the 1930s, and in the 1940s we started to break it up because of the tumultuous events that happened during the 40s, and especially the bringing in Jackie Robinson into the major leagues in 1947. So now we're breaking it up into what we think are realistic segments. The last one we did was from 1947 through 1951, and we're going to do probably 52 through 57, which culminates with the Dodgers and Giants leaving New York and moving out to the West Coast. So we're breaking it down more finely. The
terrific show going that isn't baseball, believe it or not. It's with Hal Bach, and
and we do. I co-host with you and Hal Bach on Tuesday nights, and we do a show called from the old garden, Madison Square Garden at Nedick's on 48th Street, and we have
some great memories from those
talked
days.
about football, baseball, and basketball, both pro and college.
Every now and again, a little hockey. I know you're not a big hockey fan.
No, I stopped following hockey after they expanded from 6 teams to 12 teams.
Yeah,
but that's on my own, my own, way of doing things.
I understand. Yeah. In every sport, expansion cheapens it in some way.
A friend of mine was telling me there aren't that many very good ball players out there today. I said there are, but they're scattered. And we have 30 teams instead of 16 teams. You're going to have a lot of people who, in the old days would not even be looked at.
But also we have the infusion of international play. We have the Caribbean, and we have China, we have Korea.
Japan.
Yeah.
The DR, the Pirates this past week brought up a kid who was the first major league player to be born in Africa.
Right. I think baseball brings the world together, and I love it, as do you. Thank you, Al Blumkin, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. We will catch you guys on the flip-flop, and keep on keeping on, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, take care, Ralph.
Be well.
Bye-bye. that